Kwe, Upsaladik. Hello, welcome. My name is Neil Silcox. I'm the Faculty Excellence Lead here at the Maple League of Universities. And I'm joining you today from Kjipuktuk, Halifax, here in unceded Mi'kma'ki. I'd invite you to let me know in the chat where you are joining from if you'd like. I'm really excited to welcome you all to the organized academic session I'm really keen on. Dr. Elizabeth Wells, whom you see here next to me, is a professor of music at Mount Allison University, where she has also served as the Picard-Bell Chair in Music and the Dean of Arts. She's a former 3M National Teaching Fellow and is a leading thinker around the scholarship of teaching and learning, with 5 prestigious teaching awards and a large honking handful of research awards as well. Her book, The Organized Academic, which I have been privileged to read a preview copy of, and I can tell you it's really good, will be published this fall by Rowman Littlefield. Elizabeth, I will throw it over to you.
Well, thanks, Neil. Thanks for that very generous introduction. And hello, everybody. It's good to see people from all over Canada. It's really great to be here today. I've got a whole book's worth of productivity and goal setting and all kinds of things to talk about, but we can't do it all in an hour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on one aspect, which I think might be very important for all of us in terms of how we decide what we're going to do. And then, so I'll go through that in a kind of a workshop way. And then if you'd like to do that, there's a handout that Neil has sent out to people. You can either print it or you can type into it or do it later if you want to. And then we'll open it up for questions and discussion around other aspects of productivity and getting things done. So it's that time of year, it's August. So most of us in Canada are either sort of approaching the end of our research time. We're kind of wrapping that up, and we're going to start up our fall teaching and fall meetings. And I just thought it was the time to sort of think about our systems, our processes, who we are, why we're doing what we're doing. I can tell you that I now am taking August off, except for 1 day a week to keep some of my work going. I've got all my classes and syllabi ready. I've got all my PowerPoints uploaded and completely finished, including my exams, handouts, everything else for the entire fall. So I will start working on the Tuesday after Labor Day, and I will not be working except for 1 day a week until then. So that's just my little, don't hate me because I'm beautiful, but I'm hoping you can get to the same place if you follow some of the things I'm talking about today. So that's just a little bit of inspiration for you. I'm going to share my screen now. I've got a little PowerPoint. So I'm going to start out with, why am I here? Mission statements. You might think, well, I've got so much to do. What am I thinking about a mission for? Well, I think that if you think about your mission and why you're doing this job in the first place and what your values are, that can be a very helpful way to sort of decide what you're going to do, what you're going to spend time and energy and focus on. So I'm going to open up the floor for a question in a minute here, but just to give you a sense of me, Neil has kind of covered it, but I'm a full professor at Mount Allison, a 3M National Teaching Fellow. I'm a musicologist, so I deal with the history, analysis, and criticism of music, mostly classical music, although I do West Side Story as and musical theater as my main area, which is very fun. I've been very interested in time management, effectiveness, productivity for years now. I've been coaching people and doing workshops on this, and I finally decided I wanted to write a book on it. If you go to theorganizedacademic.com or elizabethwells.ca, you can get some of my rubrics and some of my handouts for things. My book is coming out in the fall, so you can pre-order it through Rowman Littlefield if you want to. And I'm hopefully going to do a little book tour in the fall through the Atlantic region and get people involved in some of the things I've been talking about today. So the objectives of our session today is take steps to refine what you are doing, define it to yourself and others, and make sure that what you are doing is aligned with your values and objectives. So we're going to do some exercises today for considering research, teaching, and service missions, focus, and goals. I'm going to also provide you some basic sources and further reading, and Neil can make this PowerPoint available to you afterwards if you would like, so you can take a look at those things in your own time. There's kind of either with me today or afterwards. So this is time for you. This is a little you time just before everything starts to overwhelm you, that you might find very valuable in terms of thinking about sort of why you're here. But in essence, I want you to achieve this, that what you are doing at any given moment is exactly what you should be doing. No distractions, no guilt, just relaxed, focused flow. And I think that that's a situation we often find very difficult to achieve in the academy because of the many competing demands we have for our time and energy. I'm going to start now with a rationale as to why I'm doing this. You all know about mission statements. You go into a hotel lobby and it has the mission, we would like to be the best hotel in the world. And you think, oh, I'm tired of that. I've seen these all the time. Most mission statements are made for the consumer corporate world. But the institution of the university and the role of the faculty member or student are unique in our culture. We don't have anything like this in the rest of at least Canadian American culture. We also have no clear edges to our work. Our work is never done in the way that some other people have work that they can turn off at certain times. No one outside really understands us or our world. I'm sure you're all dealing with people who think you had the whole summer off for 4 months to lie on the beach. No one teaches us this in grad school. We get some instruction on how to teach, maybe a little bit. We get a lot of instruction on how to do research, but no one actually tells us how do you deal with the job of being an academic in the real world. And so this mission is to sort of start us to think about how we might approach this very difficult job. All my ideas come from other people. I shamelessly have ripped them off other people. Two of my favorites are Stephen Covey. You probably know his book, First Things First, or The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And the mission stuff we're going to do today is very much based on Covey's work. And David Allen, who has a book called Getting Things Done, which has been shortened to just GTD, is a methodology that has worked for people all over the world, especially in the tech sector. I do a lot with David Allen's work, and others that I have read, which I'll give to you in the last slide, that have been adapted by me to an academic context. So instead of having to read all these books yourself, I'm trying to kind of coalesce them into a manageable package for you for today. So I'll pass it over to you for a second here. What are the biggest challenges you face in balancing your commitments or getting things done around your job? And I would ask Neil to just, if you want to write these in the chat, Neil will give me some chat comments if I can't see them coming, and we'll just share some of these. Because I think one of the things we find is that we often feel overworked, overextended, or that we are kind of chaotic in the way we're going at things.
I could start by saying, what I find is that I feel like sometimes email feels like a to-do list that other people get to write onto for me. And so it's like the perpetual struggle to just feel like I've dealt with things in the right way. Here's some other things. Rana says, last minute deadlines dropped by senior. Oh wait, everything's coming in fast. I can't read it. Where were we? Time needs more time. Tana, last minute deadlines dropped by senior management. Having enough time in a quote regular workday. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Too many roles and too much being asked of one person. Email keeps filling up. Time, so many completing priorities. All the unplanned things that arrive in my inbox each day. Responding to people right away. Prioritizing, keeping time for exercise, meditation, and family. From Barbara, that's really great.
Yeah.
That seems to be it for now.
Okay, that's good. So let me just go to my next slide, which is what I find with most academics I've worked with, whether that's individually in groups, is that if you just scratch them just a little bit, you'll find guilt, shame, and fear around what they're doing in academia. It's the most commonly reported feelings of academics, I find. You feel guilt that you're not getting it all done. You feel shame that you've got this great job, but somehow you're not keeping up. And you've got fear that people will find out that you're a phony and that you aren't keeping it all together. And then you feel guilt, shame, and fear about your guilt, shame, and fear, right? So I find that getting to sort of some of these emotional aspects right at the beginning of the session is just to get you to think a little bit about how you feel about your work and how you feel about your overwhelm, because that's going to affect you in a great way. And these are not good emotions. These are negative emotions that do not help you at all. And again, part of what I try to do in the book is try to sort of assuage some of this by pointing out things that we can do that will make us feel a little bit better about our guilt, shame, and fear. But I wanted to just put that out there at the beginning as a way to sort of frame, it's okay to feel this way. Everybody feels this way. And in fact, I've had people come to me who are like SHRC winners, amazing productive people. And they say, I just feel so guilty and fearful about what I'm doing because I can't keep up with what I'm doing. So it's not just people who are not necessarily feeling like they're cutting it, but the very top achievers are having these same feelings. So, I mean, Jessica Riddell has done some great work around Hope University and coming to a place where we don't have this happening so much. But in the meantime, we still do have to deal with it. Let's start here. Who are you and why are you here? So I'm talking today about developing a mission within the university, and if you want to, in life, which can also be very helpful. You've probably written a teaching philosophy or a program of research, and so I want to just tell you that this is a slightly different animal than those things. So a mission guides priorities and choices. Again, when you were talking about too many roles, too many things coming in, it comes before a program of research. Philosophy, for a teaching philosophy, may indicate a reason or basis for actions and describes actions, but a mission provides guiding principles to determine those actions, a commitment. Mission is based on values and ultimate objectives, beginning with the end in mind, which is a big thing that Stephen Covey talks about in his work. And a mission should not be too long or detailed. It's not supposed to be something that goes on, but instead provide helpful guiding statements to you. Why would you want to do this when you have so many other things to do? Well, I'll tell you why. It identifies your core values. And a lot of us think that we all have the same values, but we don't. It determines what drives you, why you get up in the morning and why you go to work and why you do the things you do. It refines your most important motivations from all the other pressures you experience from other people. It develops your profile and your raison d'etre for yourself and for others. So you can say to people, this is my value system, this is what I'm interested in doing. It allows you to align your activities and your time and energy commitments to what is most central and important to you and your work. It helps you make hard decisions when you have to decide whether you're going to take on a project or not, or whether you're going to spend time on something or not. Goals flow from your mission. So, we talk a little about goal setting, but there's no point in setting goals if you don't know what road you're on to be setting the goals in the first place. It's inspiring for those days when you need it. I have to say, sometimes when I have a bad teaching day, I get up my teaching philosophy or my mission, and I just sort of think, okay, that's why I'm doing this. I can settle down. I can get over this problem, whatever it is, and keep going. In what areas do you want to have a mission? Well, many people have one overarching one for life, which tends to be a little bit more personal. It's often about spirituality or family or sort of what you're doing on the planet. We don't have to do that today. It's very good to have a teaching mission. Again, this is different from a teaching philosophy, which is often a 1 or 2 page document about how you do the things you do and maybe why. A research mission, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, how this can be very helpful too in terms of deciding what you want to do. Service mission. I have a service mission. Most people don't because they don't like to do service, but especially in the days when I was a dean and a chair of a department, I found it very helpful to have a kind of a mission around that. A career mission, which I also have, which is a little bit different. It's about your sort of whole career put together. And they should align with and work in concert with each other. In other words, if you have a research mission to be a world renowned expert that flies all over the world, giving your talks on your research, but you also want to homeschool small children, those two missions might not be able to be aligned. So you have to make sure that they align with each other and work in concert with each other. So here are the components to a mission statement. Core values, which we're going to talk about in a second. Things you want to learn. We are always learning. We always need to learn to feel that we're fulfilled people. A legacy you want to leave. And for people like me who are approaching nearer retirement age, that's a lot of things that I think about in that area. Your strengths, as well as areas that need work. And thinking how you are at your best. And then also monitoring your negative aspects, things you'd like to do less of, whether that's procrastination or negative thinking about your work or whatever it happens to be. Now, you can actually go to on the Franklin Covey site. This was the Franklin Planner people went into business with Stephen Covey company. Stephen Covey's dead now, but if you go there, they have a mission builder, and you type in all these things and hit go, and it spits out your mission. Now, it's a little bit kind of you can, but it does actually allow you, if you want to work on one for teams or for families or whatever, it kind of gives you something to work with. So I just suggest that. And again, I'll have that at the end of the PowerPoint if you're interested in checking it out. But there are ways you can do this that are a little bit more streamlined than what we're going to do today. But I think the way we're doing it today is the right way to do it, if I may say so. So let's do an exercise here. If you have the handout, you can take a look at this. If you don't have the handout, you can just think about this or write it down on a piece of paper or a card or your computer. What are some values that you have as an academic, as a, how do I put it here? I cannot see my word. Values as an academic. Yeah, in general as an academic. Is that rigor? Is that autonomy or independence? Interdependence? Service? Social conscience? Relevance? Some people want their research to be very cutting edge. Some people want their research to be interdependent with other researchers and work with other people. Some people do their research for a feminist or environmental reason. I know Tony Roberts does a lot of his research around those kinds of things. Other areas. So just think a little bit about what some of your values are as an academic, and write that down. I'll just give you a minute or two to do that. Okay, so you can do this again after I leave. You can continue doing this, but let's go on to our next slide, which is, let me get my cursor in the right place here. What are your values and core values as a teacher? Is it compassion for your students? Is it passion? Is it rigor again? Like, we can be rigorous teachers, we can be rigorous researchers. Maybe that is a word that you don't like. Whether it's standards, communication, community, again, feminism, political action. What are your values and what are your sort of core beliefs of yourself as a teacher? What do you want to get across? And I'll give you again a few minutes just to think about that. Okay, again, we'll just move on for the sake of expediency here, but you can keep working on that after the session is over. Now think about, what are your strengths in research, teaching, and service, or whatever parameters work for you, whether that's how you run your life as an academic in your university, as a community member, whether that's what you feel your strengths are in these areas, because that's important to know. When you want to work to your strengths, obviously we always want to improve things we don't do as well, but I think it's much more rewarding to strengthen and work to your strengths than it is to think about what you're not doing that you want to be doing. So I'll give you a minute just to think about that too. While you're doing that, think about what are things that need work, what distracts you or doesn't live up to your expectations of yourself in these areas, because that's an important thing to think about. As I say, I don't think we want to focus on the negative, but you do want to ameliorate some of your aspects. Maybe if it's procrastination, or you're too hard on yourself, or you're too hard on other people, or you don't spend enough time on service, or whatever it happens to be. I'm sure most people won't say they don't spend enough time on service, but I'll give you a minute just to think about that. Okay. So we just took some time to work on that. It's another exercise which I find is very, very revealing. At your retirement party from your university, this is what you want your students to say about you. This is what you want your departmental colleagues to say about you. This is what you want your disciplinary colleagues to say about you, and what has been your most significant accomplishment. And I want to give you just a couple of minutes for that. You don't have to do them all now, you can do them later, but even if you just think about one of those areas and what you would like them to say in their comment party. Okay, I'll cut you off a little bit. I know this is a very interesting prospect to think about, but I wonder if there's anybody who wants to share some examples, either of their values in those areas, or what you want people to say about you at the end of your career, at the end of when this is all going off into retirement beauty land. And I don't know, Neil, if you want to take some of those in the chat, just because we have a lot of people here today, it might be hard to just unmute people, but if you want to write anything in the chat, we'll share some of those.
Yes, I'll absolutely do that. And someone, Rhea, observed that we could also ask, as opposed to observations from the outside, but what we think about ourselves. And at the end,
well, that's the most important relationship you have, right? Is with yourself. So that's a really great point.
Suzanne says that she hopes that people say she cared about me. Rana, that there was that was some energy. Would make me happy. Love it. Wendy, that students would say, I still use what she taught me. Oh, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Tony says, students, that I have changed their perspective on things, from social change or feminism or environmentalism, etc. Nancy says, I'm almost at the end of my career. Hopes that they say that I demonstrated relevance of social justice to academic learning and to the campus environment. Great.
Great. Love that.
Tony shares that their values would be equality, EDID, universal design for learning, radical inclusion. Jill hopes that people will say she mattered to us. These are beautiful.
Yeah, but this is it, people.
Jill, you matter to me.
Yeah. when you think about what you do every day and what you spend time and energy on, is it focusing on these goals? Is it achieving what you want to achieve? I mean, we all have busy work, we all have things we have to do, but think very carefully about how you spend your very limited time and energy, and think about what you're really about, because this is the core stuff. This is what really matters. And this will help you make decisions as to whether you take on that committee or that job or that responsibility or that project. Here's a teaching mission taken from a teaching philosophy statement. Teaching is a human endeavor. As much as we value the mastery of information and skills and their application, what we as teachers and students truly desire is to be educated, the result of embracing values and attitudes that transcend the material we study. What I try to shape through teaching is not results, but the values of people with whom we want to live, work, and share our world. This endeavor to create thoughtful, critical, compassionate, and passionate individuals crosses all disciplines, all methodologies, all approaches, and is the foundation of my teaching. So there's an example of something that's drawn from a teaching philosophy statement, but it's like the thing you would look at and say, okay, this is what I'm about. I'm about changing people. I'm about making people into something more than they were before. And this underlies my teaching. So again, this is a great one to look at when you're having a bad day. Here's my research mission. Actually, I'm using some of my own examples because I have permission to do so. To explore the intersections of human life and music making in a way that enriches the world's knowledge and appreciation of musical works in their context. Through mindful and important pieces of scholarship to reveal unknown or underappreciated musics, or to shed new and thought-provoking light on others. It is my mission to continually improve my critical, analytical, and writing skills to create scholarship on the highest level of relevance and interest. So you might say, okay, that sounds fine, but what would I do with that? So how does this play out? Well, it's on how much time to devote to research or teaching and when, the kinds of projects you take on, prioritizing between different projects and goals, undergirding a research program or a teaching philosophy. So I think you should start with your mission before you write those things. And I'll give you an example of how this one worked out for me. I had put together a book proposal and I'd sent it out to a big publisher. And it was about music that people don't know very much about. So I was trying to do my mission of talking about underappreciated music. And I was trying to make it relevant. I was trying to make all those things happen. The publisher wrote back and said, well, this is fine, but how is it going to interest a more general audience? And at first my pushback was like, it doesn't have to, research doesn't have to. Audience of musicologists, I'm trying to do something here that is shedding light on something no one's done before. And they said, yeah, but like, what's the point? So I went back to my research mission and I said, okay, I've just rated the parts here. Intersections of human life and music making, I'm doing that. And their context, I'm doing that. To reveal unknown or underappreciated musics, I'm doing that. Or to shed new and thought-provoking light on others. And then at the end, they're the highest level of relevance and interest. And I realized that when I looked at the research I was doing, it did actually impact how we saw bigger and more important pieces of musical theater. In fact, it was kind of groundbreaking in terms of saying, because these things you don't know about happened, these other things which we all know about then happened. So I was able to go back to that and say, okay, like this is how I can shed new and thought-provoking light on others. And this is how I can reach the highest level of relevance and interest, which were not really met by what I had originally done, which I thought was this great, like, really important moral, reason to do this work because nobody knew about it. So I actually went back to this, thought about it, and realized I needed to redo the book in a different way. And so I did. And so it was a better book as a result. So again, like it seems like it's just sort of putting words together, wordsmithing. But when you actually go deep down into this, it does show you how it could help you make decisions on something really big, like should I change my research program? Should I change the proposals of this book? Here's Gandhi's mission. Let the first act of every morning to be make the following resolve for the day. I shall not fear anyone on earth. I shall fear only God. I shall not bear ill will toward anyone. I shall not submit to injustice from anyone. I shall conquer untruth by truth. And in resisting untruth, I shall put up with all suffering. Now that's a really good mission. Probably most of us can't claim to have that as our mission for the day. But just to show you, you can have the teaching mission, you can have the research mission, you can have the service mission. But you can also have a mission like this for your life, which again aligns with what you're doing in these other areas, and think about sort of what you're about. And it can be a very powerful thing. You don't necessarily want to share it with everybody all the time, but I do share with my students my teaching philosophy. And I think I'm going to start sharing with them my teaching mission, because I asked them to also put together missions for themselves. Even though they're 18 years old, they can still think about that. So if you're interested in this, I do want to get to questions and more discussion. There's an extensive exercise in Stephen Covey's book, First Things First, which was written in the 90s, that will take you through this mission development process, almost exactly the same way I've done it. But if you want to buy the book and go through it, when he talks about, like I talk about what you want people to say at your retirement, he says at your 80th birthday. So it depends on whether you want to think about it as a life thing or a career thing. Again, the Franklin Covey website has a more simplified version of mission building and examples from all different kinds of people you can take a look at. I'd say discuss this with other people and get their perspectives on you, because sometimes someone says, well, no, you're all about this. And you haven't realized those things about yourself or what drives you, but other people, your family, your colleagues can do that for you. I would say just set aside, we've just spent a couple of minutes just looking at this today for the sake of expediency, because we only have an hour, but set aside a few hours in the coffee shop or a quiet place to work this out for yourself. It will repay you to be able to do this and to have these things ready to think about and act on in your life. I'm going to say this would be easier for more seasoned faculty. It's harder to come up with a mission when you're very beginning in your career, but as you go through, I find it easier to figure out what you're about. And the other thing I'll say is that doing this may actually create a career change for you. So whether that's actually coming out of academia to do something else that resonates more with you, or doing something different within your job. So it is a very powerful exercise. And so I encourage you to start with what we did today and continue it on your own. Closing thought before I just end this mission part: whether you are happy or miserable, it takes the same amount of work. What you focus on is what you will manifest in your life. So thinking about your mission, thinking about what's positive about what you're doing will give you more happiness in your job, even if your job has a lot of negative things in it that you might resent or which stress you out. I've got a bunch of rubrics, checklists, forms, teaching materials on elizabethwells.ca. And Neil can put that in there. That's my sort of personal website. So if you want to get any of my stuff that I give away to people, you can just go there and get it. And I think Neil will also put that in the chat. I love working one-on-one with people. I would love to continue this discussion. If you'd like me to come to your school and do something, or if you'd like me to do something with you individually, you can write to me at ewells@mta.ca, or write to me through my website, which is www.theorganizedacademic.com. I just want to thank you for this part of the session, for joining me on this little journey with mission. I hope that it hasn't been seeming to be too deep for what we're dealing with right now. We're just trying to get ready for school, but that's why I wanted to keep it just to the first half of the session, so that we can now delve into questions and comments you have about, like, the nitty-gritty. How do you get things done? How do you get all your stuff done a year in advance, which is what I tried to do. It's not easy. It's not for the faint-hearted, but there are methods you can use to make your life a little bit easier. And in my book, I do talk a little bit, or a lot actually, about email management, which is one of the things that Neil was talking about before. And one of the keys to that is try to stop getting email in the first place. And this is, I mean, I know that sounds like that's so easy to do, but if you organize yourself ahead of time and you make clear to people what your email rules are, you can end up getting a lot less email. Like I get sometimes 5 emails a day. When I'm teaching, I get no emails from students, none, even in classes of 40 people, because my syllabus is so complete that there's nothing else to ask. And people say to me, well, you have this long syllabus. I could never take the time to put together a really long syllabus with all that detail. I said, well, really? But you have time to do it 40 times over every month when people are writing to you? So some of these things have to do with advanced planning. And that's my sort of big thing in the book, is how to advance plan a lot of things. But I guess I will just get out of my share screen now and put my lovely face back. And if I can stop share, here I am. And what I thought we could do now, in the time remaining, we've got about 20 minutes, is just have either a discussion about the things that we just talked about in the mission builder, which I think are interesting, but also to talk about other things you'd like to think about or work on that I can maybe help you with in the session on organization and productivity. I wanted to have a section of this that was very, hands-on, like organized, but I wanted to have a section of this that was free form, because it's not all about scheduling your day for every second of the day. That's not what makes people happy. But how do you tune down some of the noise? So if you want
to also say, I don't have a stake in Elizabeth's book, but the book, this is chapter 1 of 6 or 7 in the book, it does go into the details. But if you have questions or thoughts, you can put them in the chat and I'll read them out. Or if you want to put up your virtual hand or turn your camera on and put up your real hand, that'll work too. Can I start with a question?
Yeah, please.
Do you have tips for emerging scholars, younger scholars like myself? You said it's more difficult to come up with a mission statement and that more seasoned faculty can do it, but since you also get 18-year-olds to do it, as you say, there must be something to help with get over that hurdle.
I think when we're in graduate school, people give us our values. They tell us what we're supposed to do. They tell us what we're supposed to want. They tell us what we need. And I think the first thing that you need to do is try to separate yourself from your mentors. I mean, that's a very difficult thing to do, but to try to actually, and that's why to sit down in the coffee shop and just think, what really turns me on? What do I really want to do? And not be afraid if that says, I want to teach more, or I want to do this kind of research that I haven't done before. Like, don't let people tell you not to do those things if that's where your passion lies and that's where your energy is. So I think a part of it is just try to separate yourself from the system a little bit. Now, of course, when you're trying to get tenure, you're trying to publish, you're trying to do all these things. And what I always say to people is, imagine what you want your CV to look like at your tenure review, your tenure appointment with your faculty, and just say, what would be the most impactful things that could be on there? Am I doing too much smallest publishable unit? Am I just trying to get stuff out? Or would it be helpful to hold back for a year and just do one really big piece that's really, really important? And I think, again, that goes to what, everything you publish will be read by somebody sometime, whether it's your tenure committee or somebody in your field. You want to be good. You want to be relevant, and you want to get people to be citing your work and remembering your work and working from your work. So that's one of the things I say. It's the choices we make when we have very few choices that we can make about what is the most impactful thing we can do. And I just noticed somebody in the chat talking about having a child. Children are a great time. They're wonderful, but they're a great time suck too. And so part of it is organizing your day. If you have childcare, for instance, or if you have some opportunity to have your children looked after, how you're going to make the most of the hours you have when your child is taken care of by a spouse or a partner or somewhere else. We don't have a lot of time in the day, and we can't be, get off YouTube, get off Facebook, get off Twitter. You don't need these things. They're not helping your career. They're not moving you forward. I listen to the CBC during the day and they give me a 5-minute newscast on the hour, and that's all I need to know. For most of us, that's what we need to know. So don't get caught up in, what Trump is doing, or, what people in your university are doing around politics in your university. Like, university politics can take up. It's really not important for you unless you're directly involved in it. So I would say just make sure that you shut down the world for several hours a day to get your own work done, and don't let anything encroach on that work when you know what the stakes are. And especially with children, I think that's the most important thing, is to try to carve out that time.
There's a really great exchange that's happened in the chat as well. Rana shared something of a draft of their attempt as the director of e-learning and a multimedia studio, and said that they have an emphasis on improving quality of life.
Yeah.
Suzanne loved that. And then Rana said, the challenge is trying to do it not at the expense of my own quality of life.
Yeah.
And that's a great point, and something I think you address in the book as well.
Yeah. Well, one thing in the book, the very first chapter is sort of like who I am and how I got here. And it just all the things I did, like millions and millions of things. And then I said, but I still have the blood pressure of a teenager or whatever. And at the time that I started giving workshops, this was, my claim to fame is that I got all this stuff done, but I'm still okay. And what I've realized now as I get older is I'm doing too much stuff, And so I've started to let go of a lot of things, respectfully, and making sure that there's some, people looking after the things I used to look after. But I'm finding the less I do, the more fun it is. And if we can possibly get ourselves to a place with that kind of feeling, off now. But as I say, I'm taking August off, except for one day a week, and I work like a mad dog. But just to make sure everything is continuing. But a lot of it has to do with advanced planning, but a lot of it also has to do with doing less and being okay with that. I mean, we always say the administration makes us publish all this stuff. The administration doesn't actually make us publish a lot of stuff. We make ourselves publish a lot of stuff. We set the bar for ourselves. Most people get tenure. Most people get the promotions they want. It's not a question of that they're telling you need to do more. Enough isn't an amount. It's a decision, right? And you have to make those decisions to feel good enough about yourself that you don't feel you have to keep producing all the time in order to be a worthy academic. I mean, that's one of the things that they put into us in grad schools. You just have to keep producing. It's not true. It's absolutely not true. And so I think it's partly, I was talking to Jessica Riddell about this, and she's talking about how the system is broken and people are overworked and underappreciated. And I agree with her completely. And I think, that's not been improving in the recent years. But I said we also do it to ourselves. We also do it to ourselves. Yeah. And I think I think that's when you go into the mission stuff and you sort of think, okay, what am I actually doing here? What am I going to do? And ask yourself whether everything you're doing is really what you should be doing. Now Neil's getting married, which I love. I'm getting married in a little while, and I want to spend time with my husband. Like, I've never been married before. I'm 57, so like I want to change my lifestyle completely so that I have more time at home, and maybe adopting some kids and doing things that I never did before because I was working so much. And yeah, I did have a lot of great things happen to me, but I didn't have to have that many great things happen to me to have a good life, in terms of working in the academy.
Absolutely.
Nancy,
I think that
raised hand.
Nancy's got her hand up, and I also have a comment from Jennifer that I really want to acknowledge, which is that junior faculty who are pre-tenure have more expectations sometimes, and it is a work creep that we do need to be honest about. And publisher perish exists, and it also maybe exists partly because our own fear of it has sort of summoned the demon.
Because nobody tells you. The other thing too is nobody tells you when it's enough. No one says, okay, you take
absolutely yes.
It's not. It's just keep going, right?
Right.
And that's one thing I think that collective agreements could be. I mean, nobody in administration wants to do this, but I think collective agreements would be healthier documents if they gave you some guidelines as to what is enough publication, or what, this much in a first-tier journal, this much in a second-tier journal, or, my former president, Robert Campbell, said 2 articles a year in a book every 7 years. That's it. If everybody did that, everyone would be happy. And I think, well, in a way, that could be possible, right, for a lot of people, but we're trying to do more than we can actually do.
Yes. Nancy, I don't want to skip this question. Can we throw to you? Are you happy to turn your camera on, perhaps?
Sorry, yeah. I just find it easier to talk than writing in the chat at times. Thank you. This has been really helpful. And I would say, though, that there are other considerations in terms of our institutional, the institutional culture in which we live, that sets up expectations that women faculty do way more service. And
Yeah.
sometimes I am increasingly resentful to see some of my male colleagues who are at the same stage of their career as I am, and the minuscule amount of service. So there are various kinds of sort of structural issues that I think beyond the individual that we need to be addressing. I think that I just wanted to comment in terms of, I think that what you're laying out in terms of these mission statements would be so useful to do at select stages of one's career, like at the beginning or as you're moving into associate. So you just, and for me, I'll also say is I'm looking at 5 to 6 years before I retire. And I certainly can see doing things differently, but I don't want to, they're calling this term quiet quitting. I don't want to sort of give up and go away, you know, and that I want to still feel that I'm contributing to my institution and giving what I need to do in the classroom, and having that kind of conversation about what is relevant at various stages of one's career, and acknowledging that one's mission will change over time. So
yeah, it's meant to be a living document in a way that you're going to want to revisit.
And if you're, so my question to you though, Elizabeth, I can't imagine, I just at this stage, and it's like that old dog new tricks thing, but I can't imagine being as organized as you are in the next 5 to 6 years. So what can one do? You know, what advice would you give to someone, you know, of junior versus, you know, more senior?
Right. One of the things I say is that, you know, you look at this, if you read my book, it's only about 100 pages, so it's not a lot, but there's a lot in there. And you, at the end, I say, okay, you're going to say to me, forget it. Who's going to do all this? And I agree, there's lots of things we can do that we don't have time to do. And of course, organization is also a form of procrastination, which we all know. But what I suggest is you start with one thing. You take one thing, whether it's a book review you promised that you would do, a report you said you were going to write, the last class meeting of your course that you really wanted to be fantastic instead of just petering out, and you work on it now. You work on it like 9 months before it's due, instead of what we always do, which is wait until we have time to do it, which is often very close to it. And then you have this small win. The thing is done. You hand it in like 6 months early, you get it done. And it gives you a kind of an energy that allows you to start snowballing that into other things. So I'm still working to deadlines, you know, that I'm working on a book deadline now that I'm overdue on because of pandemic and everything else, and I'm a little stressed out about that. But a lot of the things that I'm doing are like a year in advance. And when you have a year in advance to do it, it's so much easier. You don't have the pressure, you don't have the stress, you don't have procrastination. It just seems fun. And you can just leave it. You know, it's like, I didn't finish it today, maybe I'll finish it tomorrow. But starting with small, with some projects that you can do that are reasonable, far in advance, starts moving backward, more stuff done until you're like here and you only have a few things to do. That's my advice. I mean, if I had the answer to this, I would be a millionaire of how we you know really do this. But that's been my experience, because I used to be a terrible procrastinator. I would wait till all my job applications were FedExed on the last day, you know, the whole thing. And I just started to realize that if I could take one thing at a time and do it really early, that my sense of freedom and control and relaxation was so great. It was like a high. And so I started to do that. Definitely for courses that you've taught before, don't reinvent the wheel every year. These are new people who've never seen this before. You don't need a new technology. You don't need to keep revamping it every year. It's, oh, you're going to revamp your courses every year. No, you don't. You revamp your course maybe every 2 years or every 3 years, depending on what's going on in your field. Use your notes, use your PowerPoints. Don't be ashamed of that. It's not about being original every day of the year. And so some of those things can also cut some time off and cut some stress off by us not putting all this pressure on ourselves to be Superman or Superwoman or Supermom or whatever it is. So I think that this idea of the way to tackle it. I would also suggest, if you have any money, whether that's institutional money or your own money, hire a research assistant or a teaching assistant who can do a lot of quotidian things for you. update your Moodle or your Blackboard site, organize your handouts. Like, it sounds like it's kind of stupid work that you should just do. But a student who's being paid like $15 or $16 an hour would love to have the experience of looking at materials for professors and help them with things like that. It might cost you $100, which you would spend on a nice dinner or a week of groceries or something. And if you get someone to help you with some of the stuff that you can't, don't think about that because we think we're all supposed to do it all ourselves. But leverage those things if you can, because those people love doing that work. And like once my friend came over, her son was bored. He was a teenager. I said, go up to my office and put all my journals in date order, because I had all these musicology journals and I had never sorted them. So he came up here, he did it. I gave him a $20 bill. We had a great conversation as adults downstairs. He got $20 and that was done. So like, be creative about what people might find fun to do for you, and what you could afford to have someone do that without feeling guilty about it. Those are some of my suggestions.
Wonderful. Thank you. There's another, again, off. So thank you for that. Michael talked about a proposal at their institution. They don't have tenure, but they have rank. And essentially, there's a proposal that we use a point system where each piece of productivity is given a set number of points, and faculty just need to reach that point threshold for promotion. The role of the committee would be like a tax auditor reviewing the accuracy of the points. Tony talks about how there is a double-edged sword, but it would be worried, there's some worry about that, but it'd be really nice to get more explicit directions about expectations. And that touches on something that I think Jennifer said about we need better academic leadership and mentorship around tenure and promotion, particularly for those on the tenure track.
Yeah, and I mean, there must be some middle ground. I mean, nobody wants it to be some kind of weird point system where you get docked if you didn't have this one thing done. But except be productive to that, there must be a middle ground that we can help to guide people. Like as I say, when Robert Campbell said to me, 2 articles a year and a book every 7 years, like nobody had ever said that before. And I thought, well, I could do that. And is that all I have to do? Like, then I'm done, right. That would be reasonable. That would be a totally reasonable thing. Now, depending on where you are, your teaching load, how many students you have, what your research is, maybe that would be too much or not enough or whatever. But maybe sort of just talk to colleagues too about what they're doing to get tenure and how much they produced. And that might be a helpful conversation for everybody to have in the academy. Yeah, teaching load is an variable, absolutely.
Yeah, and as is the things that happen in life when you have kids, or other people that you're taking care of. A big illness can really derail you for a long stretch of time. Any other questions? We've got maybe 5 more minutes.
Questions or comments? I'd be happy to hear from anybody about what their experiences are, what they'd like to talk more about in the future.
Oh, I see a hand from Rhea.
Yes, it's Rhea. You've said it right before.
Rhea, yeah.
I am a faculty center director. I'm also faculty. We have it as a rotating position on our campus, which has its positives and negatives. And I'm wondering, do you do a kind of workshop where you take the time with people to write this out? So we did sort of an abbreviated, here's an introduction, but would you do a workshop for like a morning or something with mid-career faculty to support them?
Absolutely.
And then if so, I would need that promo information that would get them in the door.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing and I started the book with this thing, and my first editor said, this is too, you're talking about yourself too much, it's too boasty. And I said, you know what? This is what people want to know. Like, why should I listen to you? What have you ever done that you think you're going to tell me what to do? That's why I tell everybody what I've done. It's not to be like, self-aggrandizing, but just to say, you can do this. This is how I can do it. This is how you can do it. This is how we can all do it. So I think that sort of naming the credentials and the awards and the fact that I'm a relaxed person at the end of the day is probably what most people are looking for. So I can certainly send you some stuff, but I do a lot of workshops and I'm really interested in doing more of this. This mission workshop in a longer version I did a couple of years ago at an 18th century conference. A colleague of mine invited me, and there was a woman there who said, I've never thought about this before. Like, this is changing my life. And I think, just sitting down for an hour or two and thinking about it it's really a word. I think that the mission thing, although it seems kind of artsy or something, is really, really important. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do it today, just to give people a sense of, let's start with the end in mind. Like, why are you here? And again, that changes from, as you say, and other people have said today, depending on where you are in your career, and that's normal. And that's important to acknowledge.
Right, great. So I'll email you, and I look forward to getting some information, because we're going to set up some January workshops.
Thank you. Where are you located?
We're in Oneonta, New York, sort of in the middle of nowhere, New York.
In Rochester.
No, we're not near anything.
I mean, you're in upstate New York, aren't you?
Yes, between Albany and Binghamton, where there isn't anything.
Yeah, okay.
There's a lot of middle of nowhere in the Maple League as well, so we get it.
You can relate.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wells. This was really terrific, and thank you everyone for joining us today.
Do you want to just flash up the book so people know where to get it?
I sure will.
Yeah, so the book is coming out in November. You can pre-order it. It's on Amazon.ca, but I've not seen it on Amazon.com. But if you go to the publisher's website, you can find it. There's a paperback version. There's an ebook version. As I say, I'm going to try to do a little book tour this year and try to bring some of these ideas around to people. But as I say, it's a very short read. I did it out of love for my fellow academics. So hopefully you could find it helpful, or your colleagues could find it helpful.